From the whole coaching team here, hello and welcome to the channel, everyone. Today, we are going to be discussing a little bit about the psychology of being around other cars on track. Based on our own experience and those that we've observed in the community, we've seen that initially racing around other real people can be pretty stressful. And it's not something that we've really seen anybody talk about, address, make a video on, or anything like that. With that in mind, we felt that it might help others to think about some points sooner rather than having them have to learn this from their own trial and error on their own time, on their own races. The mental aspect of being around other cars formulates the basis of racecraft and really plays into the enjoyment that everyone has on track during a race. Driving around safe drivers is great for everyone, and it really adds to the whole experience when you're able to get nice and close to other cars without fear of a race-ending incident. To be able to race properly, you have to be comfortable with other cars around you. You'll almost never be in a situation in a race where you never encounter another car. That would be more akin to hot lapping, where you would load into a totally solo session by yourself and drive around the track. If you want to finish a race, you have to get the car home without hitting any of the others out on track. If you want to improve from your starting position, you will likely have to get past some cars to be able to do that. If you want to avoid taking out cars that are lapping you, you have to be able to let them by safely. All this requires you to be around and to interact with other cars. So basically, if you're racing, you will be around other cars. The sooner you get comfortable doing that, the sooner you'll be a better racer. Really, the two big realizations here are, first, being fast does not guarantee you anything. And second, simply avoiding everyone if you are not fast is not an option. If you are fast, but you cannot control your car around others, all that speed is wasted. Even if you are absolutely rapid and manage to qualify on pole, you'll likely still need to lap other cars. And if you don't know how to be around those, you'll likely still crash out. If you're not super fast, then you will certainly need to know how to race around other cars. You can't just jump out of everyone's way and hope not to get caught up in anything, and you certainly will not be making up any positions that way either. Okay, so you can drive the track with no one else there. But having another car on track means there are now spaces that you can no longer occupy. Perhaps they are in front of you, going into a braking zone, which means you can't just brake super late or even really at your usual braking point because you run the risk of running into them. They also have the potential of moving into a new space that you might be wanting to occupy, so they might be behind you, and then have the potential to brake late and try and move to the apex of the corner that you want to go to. The fact that there's this new obstacle on track just means that you have to adjust your driving, just like if there's a particular curve that you want to avoid. So, if I'm following another car, I change my inputs accordingly to make sure that I do not hit them. This is the basics of running around another car. We have to change our inputs to account for the fact that there's another car near us, and we have to follow the absolute golden rule. Do not hit what you can see. All that having another car around you means that it is another factor that has to change your inputs. Once you understand that basic point, you can move on to optimizing these changes in your inputs. I'm sure you've all heard the saying that smooth is fast and fast is smooth. So, similar to where frantic inputs lead to bad lap times, franticness around other cars leads to disaster. Among beginner to intermediate drivers, being nervous around other cars is the number one cause of accidents. The key is patience and the realization that your goal in being around other cars should not be to get yourself out of the situation as quickly as possible, and that applies to whether you're trying to pass someone, defend, lap someone, or from being lapped. Patience, anticipation, respect. These are the keys. You will never become comfortable around other cars if you do not first learn to be patient around them. Not every mistake from the car ahead is the right time to make a lunge for the pass. Not every car lapping you needs to be allowed through at the first time of asking, and not every move from your competitor behind needs to be defended 100%. By this, we mean that not all opportunities are good opportunities. The key to being around other cars is in waiting for these good opportunities. This allows you to calm down and simply wait for that good opportunity to present itself, or for you to manufacture them through strategy, but that's for a later video. The important part is being comfortable in the waiting. This allows you to remove the stress from yourself about getting away from the other car as quickly as possible, and allows you to just get on with the job of racing. It is okay to sit behind another car for 10 laps, 15 laps, if the alternative is crashing into them, because you try to pass when the opportunity wasn't really there. A quick note on patience in lapped traffic. If you are lapping someone, you are by definition a good deal faster than them. You've already completed a whole additional lap by the time you're encountering them. Do not worry about passing them at the first corner you arrive near their rear bumper. You are risking a lot more by trying to pass them too quickly than by waiting a corner for a safe opportunity. The number of ruined races by people running in really good position and not being patient enough when lapping other cars cannot be counted. Honestly, this is probably the most common kind of incident that we see. Again, patience here is the name of the game. You will be way more consistent and faster across your whole stint if you just dial your excitement and nerves back and approach things a little bit more methodically. Once we can remove some of this franticness when driving around other cars and start practicing patience, we can move on to one of the most important mental skills when it comes to racecraft, and that is anticipation. Other cars are just another factor to consider, but they are a moving factor, and they are controlled by humans who can make several varying choices in any given situation. How do we avoid making contact with this moving factor? We have to anticipate their movements and make our own movements able to be anticipated, especially in a situation where you want to be predictable, like when you're being lapped. The physics of being around other cars will be discussed in another video, but the key here is to be in a state of mind where you are anticipating what the car ahead or directly behind might do. You do not want to be driving around other cars like there is no one else on track. You have to know that if you are following another car closely, they might brake slightly earlier than normal or at a different point that you typically do. If someone is following you and you make a mistake at corner exit, they will likely take advantage and try to get alongside you. If you are going into a turn side by side, they may brake deep and you won't be able to turn in. All those examples show that when another car is around, you have to be thinking ahead to what that car might do. With this anticipation, you end up driving with a small margin of error. This margin of error allows you to react and adapt to the things that the other cars around you are doing. It is much better to drive 0.4 of a second slower when around another car than to crash yourself out of the race. Patience and anticipation pay dividends when it comes time to finish. Respect on track is a very important point. Yes, we are in the virtual world, and there's no risk of monetary or physical damage. But you and all the other competitors owe respect to one another when you're on track. Putting yourself in a situation where all you can do is hit another car is not really acceptable and doesn't show respect to the other racers. You also have to understand that the other racers do not owe you anything. So even if you are in first place, if you come up to lap somebody, they do not simply owe you the whole road. Respect is mutual, and it basically boils down to making sure you can get yourself out of a tight situation if that is what is required. You want to make sure you don't hit another driver, even if that means giving up a position for the time being. Of course, others also need to show respect to you, but you will save yourself from a lot of grief if you're respecting the other drivers, even when they don't respect you. This is because you will always have that small margin of error we talked about to be able to back out and avoid contact. Another portion of respect comes down to keeping your cool after an incident and not assigning blame until being able to review things afterwards. Aside from avoiding saying things that you may later regret, this also helps you to keep a cool head after an incident. It is so easy to be angry, lose all your focus after an incident, and then follow that up with making a mistake or getting involved into another subsequent incident right away. The key is to accept that something has gone wrong and just to focus on getting the maximum of what is left in the race that you can. Pushing too hard to catch back up though, or driving angry, always leads to more heartache. Be aware that beginner or intermediate drivers often psych each other out. The simple fact of seeing another driver that doesn't seem confident about being around other cars makes a driver who is otherwise a clean racer nervous. The important thing is to maintain those good habits of braking earlier, being more careful on throttle, and having various brake markers. These will all be discussed in a later video. But basically, if you know what you have to do to make sure you don't hit another car, then it doesn't really matter what the other car is doing. You're in charge of your car, and you are skilled enough to not hit someone that you can see. The best place to practice simply being around other cars is against AI. It's not the best place to practice, especially passing, because the AI will tend to jump out of your way if you make a late lunge, whereas a human is not likely to be able to do that. As a substitute for practicing with humans though, you can set the difficulty somewhere close to your real pace and then put yourself in the med pack. Run a 20-minute or so session and practice learning the inputs that ensure that you don't make contact with a car ahead. If you find you're hitting the back of cars under braking, then you know you need to brake earlier or get off the throttle earlier than you do when there are no cars in front of you. This practice will get you comfortable with having extra cars in your way. You can also grab some friends and practice running close to them in a practice session where crashes don't really matter. The important thing is, don't leave practicing around other cars for race time. That always ends in tears. As a quick recap of what we talked about today, just as it is important for you to know the track before racing, along with its braking points, curbs to avoid, etc., it is also important to be comfortable around other cars. A large portion of this is mental, and being aware of the fact that the presence of others on track will require you to alter your inputs, be respectful, patient, and anticipate their movements. This awareness is the first step, with the next being practice. Racing around others is a skill that also requires practice and attention. Lastly, remember the golden rule. Don't hit what you can see. We hope to see you all on track for some close, fun racing. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. All the best from all the coaches here. Until the next one, cheers.